System Concepts in Action by Bob Williams and Richard Hummelbrunner. To introduce the concept of system thinking, looking at this short video.
Systems thinking is a way of describing the world in a more holistic manner based upon the model of a system. But let's start from the beginning. We can understand the world as things, that is parts or components, and their relations, that is how they are connected or fit together. So take a car for example. It is made up of parts, car parts such as engine, wheels and so on, and these parts are put together or organized in a specific way so as to make them function as a vehicle of transport. Now we call a group of things that are not organized in this way a set. So we'd call a group of cups on a table a set of cups because unlike the parts to our car, they have not been designed to serve some collective function. Because the group of cups is simply the sum of its parts, we would describe them by describing the individual properties of each cup, and this would tell us everything we need to know about them. This approach to describing things is called analysis or reductionism. Reductionism is the traditional approach taken within modern science that tries to describe complex phenomena in terms of their individual parts. Now take the human body that is highly organized through a complex set of relations between its parts. Out of the arrangement of these parts in a specific way, we get the overall functioning of the living organism. Because the parts are so strongly defined by their connections and function within the body as an entirety, to properly describe the parts, we need to first understand the functioning of the whole body. This approach to describing things, that is, that we can best describe things by understanding their place within the functioning of the whole they are a part of, is called synthesis, and synthesis is the foundations of systems thinking. Thus we have two different approaches to describing things. On the one hand, analysis that is interested in describing the individual components, and synthesis that talks about the relationship between these components and their functioning as a whole. Okay, so now that we know a bit about systems thinking, let's put our newfound knowledge to use. Say a car manufacturing company has employed us to design their next great model. Now we could take two different approaches to this problem, applying analytical thinking or our friend's systems thinking. If we approach the problem from a traditional perspective, we would start by analyzing the car and looking for ways to optimize it. We might come away with a design that minimizes the car's drag by reducing its height by a few centimeters to increase its fuel efficiency. Now if we applied systems thinking to this problem, we would start by identifying the car's function, that is personal transportation, and the system it is a part of, the transportation system. From this perspective, we might not even need to design a new car at all, but end up designing some service that connects pre-existing resources to provide the same desired functionality. From this example, we can see how systems thinking is often employed when the current paradigm or way of doing things has reached its limit and gives us a fresh perspective on things. Systems thinking is the beginning of another closely related area called systems theory that goes on to give us a whole suite of tools for analyzing and modeling systems and their interaction dynamics as they evolve over time. So we can wrap up by saying that systems thinking is an emerging paradigm within many areas from science to engineering and business management that presents an alternative to our traditional modern analytical methods of inquiry by emphasizing the need for a more holistic and contextualized understanding of the world.
The book is divided into three parts. Part 1. Describing and analyzing situations. This part focuses on methods that are primarily used to describe situations systematically and analyze the various boundaries, perspectives, and interrelationships that are observed. Causal loop diagrams. This method is especially appropriated for visualizing strong, interconnected situations and for recognizing the underlying structures behind patterns of events. It can be used to analyze relationships of a situation through the interaction of feedback loops and delays. By analyzing feedback loops, one can have insights about behavior pattern. Causal loops diagrams are a relatively easy visualizing method with advantages on dealing with complex or messy situations and can be used to construct a more comprehensive picture of a situation. System dynamics is an approach for understanding the dynamic behavior of a system, in particular social systems. It is based on the idea that systems consist of elements that have, at a specific point in time, a value called stock, which can change over time through inflows and outflows. The dynamic behavior of a system is explained by the relationship between stocks and flow variables, which is expressed in a stock and flow diagram. Stock variables accumulate past events. They constitute the memory of a system. Delays often arise because an inflow is stored in a stock variable. System dynamics offers valuable insights into dynamic behavior of complex systems and can be used in various evaluation purposes. For example, evaluation of a program prior to its start, testing the hypothesis of causality or impact of policy options and outcomes, and it devises alternative routes to improve a program effectiveness. After implementation, it can be used to understand why it is behaving the way it is. Social network analysis are a set of techniques for analyzing social systems used to understand network and their participants, to grasp and describe the organization of the network as a whole, as well as the position of individual actors. It offers a variety of techniques for measuring, visualizing, and stimulating relationships, and allows analyzing these relationships in visual as well as mathematical terms. Explains social phenomena as interaction of individuals. Outcome mapping is an approach to planning, monitoring, and evaluating social change initiatives. It is a set of tools and guidelines that steer project or program teams through an iterative process to identify their desired change and to work collaboratively to bring it about. The focus of outcome mapping is on one specific type of outcome, changes in behavior of those individual, groups, and organizations with which a program works directly and anticipates opportunities for mutual influences. It monitors and evaluates whether a program has contributed to intended behavior changes and helps to clarify the role of different stakeholders, letting them explore the most relevant and sustainable set of activities to focus on. Fosters great ownership and commitment and enable more sustainable change.
And now for the process monitoring of impacts. And what is that? Essentially, it is about identifying processes considered relevant for the achievement of results or impacts, and then monitoring whether these processes are valid and actually take place. Process monitoring of impacts consists of 4 main steps. First, identify and structure intended effects, define or agree on assumptions for the achievement of effects. 3. Define areas of observation to monitor processes. And lastly, assemble and interpret data. In the case of gaps between actual and desired states, the circular logic model helps to identify where and how program actors should modify their mechanisms in order to improve the achievement of effects. And now on to strategic assumptions surfacing and testing. That is outlined by using the SAST principles model. The principles is about finding ways that people can resolve, refrain, and according to use Ross Acuff's term, dissolve problems rather than solve problems. So when is SAST most useful? Jackson considers the model to be at its best when the situation being explored is relatively simple rather than complex, and where there are no fundamental differences between participants. And now on to part 2 of the book, that is about changing and managing situations. And what is that about? Systems, methods focused on understanding and influencing the dynamics or perceptions of a situation to improve or sustain those. Here we are diving into the strategic area of assessment, or SAA as it's called, which is an instrument for local and regional development. The SAA method can be used at conferences as its key event and the Innovation Compass as its main tool. It is a powerful, flexible and time-saving method. Practically, you are taking a starting point in the Innovation Compass, illustrated on the picture, that is made up of 9 components forming an enneagram. You are going through 5 steps to finally have a path that you can pitch ahead. And the first step is about preparing the SAA conference, then process the key questions, make a web diagram, and then look into the critical points, drawing conclusions and so on, and lastly pitch the path ahead. Then to the CDE model. And the CDE model explains the 3 systems conditions that influence the speed, path and direction of self-organizing systems. The conditions shape the patterns that make up the reality of our world. So the CDE model consists of 3 dimensions, as you can see on the picture: containers, differences and exchanges. Together they form the basis of the CDE model. So when you shift one condition, it will impact all the others, so you don't have to do all 3 at once. You can change one condition and then observe how the others adjust. Because these changes happen quickly, the cycle time changing and managing situations is short, and the next attempt to shift one of the conditions can be based on the results of the last shift.
Chapter 9. Assumption-based planning. Assumption-based planning helps an organization to prepare for changes in its environment that could disrupt its plans. It is systemic because it explores the interrelationships, perspectives, and boundaries of an established plan to ensure the viability of that plan. The most important method from this chapter is the 5-step method illustrated to the right. The next chapter is chapter 10, the Xenophon chapter. First off, there are those who seek to treat all situations as if they were simple. Then there are those who regard everything as complex. More recently, a third approach has evolved, which is the Xenophon approach. Also quoted as, managing everything as if it were simple is ineffective, and managing everything as if it's complex is inefficient. Xenophon identifies 4 behaviors in a situation that can be displayed by simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic, also called the Xenophon behavior spectrum, illustrated in the top right corner. Next is the Xenophon framework, illustrated in the bottom right corner, and these tools are the most important from this chapter. Next is chapter 11, the solution focus process. Solution focus is an approach to positive change within people, teams, or organizations by analyzing, reacting to, and talking about them. Solution focus is based on 2 fundamental assumptions, which is there is not necessarily a logical connection between problem and solution, and the route to the solution depends on the solution itself and not the problem. There are 6 steps involved in the solution focus process, which is the platform, future perfect, counters, affirm, small actions, and scale, also illustrated to the right. The final chapter is chapter 12, the viable system chapter. The viable system model illustrates the minimum requirements that must be placed on a social system if they were to prove enduring and capable of development. The aim is to bring enterprises and organizations into conditions such that they can attain their optimum performance capacity and to render these enterprises and organizations able to survive in the long term. In other words, to be viable. The viable system model is illustrated to the right and contains 5 systems. System 1 contains multiple systems, each related to the operational process, illustrated by the separate 6 System 1s. System 2 provides information, communication, and processes for issues common to all systems, which is why it is placed between all the operational System 1s and the System 3, which is the first of the metasystem. System 3 is essentially the interface between System 1 and the policymakers in System 5. System 4 acts as an intelligence function that monitors the environment and helps the enterprise adapt and plan. System 5 is the process of making policies and changes depending on the outcome of the other systems, and it's the company's final system to achieve the goals. This was the end of part 2 changing and managing situations. Next is part 3.
System Concepts in Actions, Part 3, focuses on learning about situations. The translation of information into knowledge is a sense-making process. Learning is the process of taking things that puzzle us and transforming them into deeper understandings of a situation that is of interest to us and how we can intervene. These methods are usually highly participative and encourage multiple viewpoints. In the upcoming slides, we will explain the following methodologies: cultural historical activity theory, soft systems methodology, dialectical methods of inquiry, scenario technique, systems questioning, circular dialogues, critical systems heuristics. Cultural historical activity theory, or CHAT, focuses on understanding how we develop understandings of the real world, draw meanings, and create learnings from those. CHAT is based on 3 components: system, learning, and development, which are constructed from 7 basic propositions. CHAT's main pro is that it helps to acknowledge the benefits of acknowledging contradictions and disturbances, which are approached as opportunities for learning, innovation, and development. Soft System Methodology, or SSM. According to its founder Shackland, different people within a situation are working toward different objectives, based on different perspectives which influence their behavior and thus the dynamics of the situation. Therefore, addressing a problematic situation requires an understanding of multiple perspectives. SSM's 7-step approach can expose important insights and highlight unspoken assumptions. The success of SSM depends on being able to separate systems thinking stages and real-world stages, which lead to tensions which are approached as sites for creative thinking. In the end of the cycle, an action should improve the problematic situation. Dialectical methods of inquiry. Dialectic is the use of opposing viewpoints to gain meaning and has been a core aspect of modern systemic inquiry. There are 3 approaches which all give value to sense-making of exploring differences rather than commonalities. Option 1.5 will develop a new option by combining key advantages of 2 opposing proposals, while including as few key disadvantages as possible. Contradictions analysis is focused on analyzing and making sense of contradictions while explaining how they can occur, rather than seeking to explain them away. Convergent interviewing seeks to resolve 2 interview dilemmas. With broad questioning, one may never be able to spot a needle in the haystack, and specific questions may miss the really important questions. The result is an efficient form of data collection and interpretation, which allows their quality to be checked. Dialectical approaches inevitably challenge mental models and establish beliefs and promote acceptance rather than rejection of contrary evidence.
Now we move on from the methods used for learning about situations to the tools and techniques that can be applied. The first technique we are going to explain is scenario technique. Scenario technique is a perspective-driven technique that seeks to avoid problem solving by working backward from potential solutions. According to Bob Williams, there are 8 steps to develop a scenario. These steps can be seen in the model presented on the right side of the slide. In strategic management, the scenario technique is applied to conceive at least 3 alternative futures: the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and the most probable course of development. The point here is to obtain models for future risks and opportunities in support of foresight and prevenient action. Scenario thinking and scenario planning help to minimize risks and to configure your resources in an optimal manner. The next one is system questioning. Systematic questioning is an approach for exploring the investigative qualities of language patterns. It was originally developed in family therapy. Beyond obtaining information, questions can also be used to trigger change in perception or generate new information and knowledge. There are 4 types of systematic questions, which can be seen in the figure on the right side of the slide. These are called linear questions, strategic questions, reflective questions, and circular questions. Any single question occupies a space within 3 dimensions: time, the extent to which the question explores the past, present, or future; level of abstraction, the extent to which the question deals with functional issues or questions of meaning; speculation, the extent to which the subject of the question has already been addressed, an analytic question, or requires a degree of speculation. The next one is circular dialogues. Circular dialogue is a method that forces participants to take a critical stand on a topic by progressively shifting the focus of a discussion. Its primary use is to understand perspectives. Dialogue techniques are based on three key assumptions. The first assumption: different perspectives are valued positively. Exposing oneself to different views helps to overcome mental barriers of thinking and increase the chances for finding solutions or answers that are acceptable for all. The second assumption: a system can be changed only from within. This means a dialogue never aims at direct influence of persuasions, but is seen as a means to experience different perspectives, which in turn should help the participants to change their mental maps. The third assumption: languages makes a difference. Attention is placed on the specific language patterns used by the participants. This helps participants understand their mental maps from within and at the same time to overcome their limitations or to identify possible connections. The basic features of a circular dialogue are perspectives, which with the rule that there should be at least 3 perspectives. These are assigned in this figure to the participants A, B, and C. Furthermore, the communication takes place in a strict order. This means first A, then B, then C. There is one or several observants. In this case, it's participant C, which observe the expressions and reflect upon them. Someone who is not involved in the dialogue acts as a facilitator and assure the discipline required, that is, keep time and stop discussions between participants. The length of the circular dialogue sessions varies between 30 and 90 minutes. The last one is critical system heuristics. Critical system heuristics is a tool primarily designed to identify key system boundaries and explore the consequences of setting those boundaries. It is helpful in understanding that unanticipated behaviors are often not unanticipated at all. The critical system heuristic framework can be seen on the right side of the slide. The heuristic identifies 12 key boundaries decisions. Each of these boundary decisions is explored in 2 ways, a normative mode and an objective mode. The dialectic generated by comparing the ORD and the IS provides the source material for the boundary critiques. There are also dialectics within each mode. For instance, in the normative modes whose ORD is being privileged and whose ORD is being marginalized. This tool can be used in different ways at different stages of an inquiry for different purposes. It can be used to shape the questions asked within an inquiry. It can create discussion around an inquiry, or it can be used to analyze the result of an inquiry. This presentation was the overall resume of the methods and tools of system concepts in action according to Bob Williams and Richard Hummelbrunner. We hope you enjoyed.